Start 'em and sit 'em for Week 6 on CBS Local Sports. Welcome, everybody. Dave Richard, Jamie Eisenberg, and Ryan Bass hanging out here with you. You can always tweet us your questions at Dave Richard, at Jamie Eisenberg, and at CBS Fantasy. All right, let's get to it. Start and sit at quarterback. Who are you starting this week, Dave?
I love the idea of Sam Bradford against the New York Giants, especially with the Giants secondary banged up. Prince Amukamara not expected to play. It's going to open up some doors in that Philadelphia offense, and we've seen Sam Bradford put up some good numbers the past couple of weeks. I think it continues.
You're sitting a big name this week at quarterback, Jamie.
Well, he should have been a sit for the majority of the season so far. He's got one game over 20 fantasy points from Russell Wilson. He hasn't just delivered at all, and now he's got a tough matchup against the Panthers. He's played this team 3 times in the last 3 years, and he's underwhelmed against them in the regular season every time. So with the way that he's performing, the offensive line's terrible. They get Luke Kuechly back. It's an easy sit to get away from Russell Wilson right now. Hopefully things turn around for him. He's a good buy low candidate. But right now, not getting the job done.
Your starts of the week come at running back and in the same backfield.
Yeah, the Patriots. I mean, you're looking at a team right now that has gotten good production from their running backs for the last 2 weeks, since LeGarrette Blount has gotten work. So the floor for him, 7 fantasy points. We know the history against this Colts defense, and he should have a monster game. I mean, the last 2 times he's faced him, over 120 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns at least in each of those games. They averaged 219 rushing yards in the last 3 meetings against the Colts. So great opportunity for him, and then Dion Lewis clearly has gotten the job done each of the last 4 games this year.
That's one backfield that's been great so far, one that stunk, the Denver Broncos.
And you can't start him, and it's terrible because it's a great matchup against the Cleveland Browns. The Browns are allowing over 5 yards per carry to opposing running backs, but we've got 2 problems here. Number 1, these guys stink. Number 2, you don't know who's going to do what in this game. So with them taking away from each other as far as workload goes, you can't feel good about starting either one.
Who are you starting at receiver?
Like a lot of guys at receiver, but Allen Robinson has been red hot lately for Jacksonville, and I think he's going to continue to play well against the Houston Texans. I don't think their secondary can compete. I like him and Allen Hurns, same team, same game.
You're dropping a bombshell on us here, Jamie, with your sit at wide receiver.
It's not an outright sit. You got to really have the right guys to get away from Antonio Brown, but it's just one of those scenarios where you probably should have sat in the last 2 weeks. I mean, Michael Vick has clearly taken what is arguably the best receiver in the NFL and turned him into Marcus Wheaton. I think you look at Antonio Brown right now the last 2 weeks, under 50 yards receiving, no touchdowns, and now he's got to deal with Patrick Peterson. He's taken away every legit number 1 receiver that he's faced so far this year. So I think it's going to be another tough game for Antonio Brown. Hopefully he does better than what we've seen the last 2 games, but I doubt it's going to have a monster game like we typically see from him.
There's more than one guy in Green Bay with the last name Rodgers that's producing in a tight end. You'd start Richard Rodgers this week.
I would. I think you look at a scenario where the cornerbacks for the Chargers have done a very nice job. Jason Verrett could match up with Randall Cobb. Brandon Flowers can make things a little bit difficult on James Jones. The key, however, will be if Devontae Adams plays, which doesn't sound like he's going to, but if Adams does sit out again, we've seen since he's gone out in week 2, we've seen a lot more of Richard Rodgers. Scored 2 touchdowns over that span, and last week was actually the team leader in targets. So you tell me he's going to get most targets from Aaron Rodgers, 6 catches led the team last week. That's going to lead to big production against the Chargers.
Gary Barnidge has become a household name in fantasy, Dave. Are we starting him this week?
Tons of yards and tons of touchdowns, but I don't think he does that well against the Denver Broncos. If you're looking for a guy who might get you 70 total yards, I think he can do it. At tight end, that's actually not that bad, but we should always be shooting higher for that. Might do a little bit better in PPR leagues, but there's no denying the matchup against Denver. The only thing you can buy into with Barnidge is that he's getting a lot of targets, and that might lead to decent production. Like I said, 70 yards, is that what you're looking for? That's what you might get from Gary Barnidge.
Start him and sit him for week 6. Remember, guys, send us your questions on Twitter at Dave Richard and at Jamie Eisenberg. Thanks for watching.